Welcome my students, Dr. Ugve here, and today we are going to study the last video of the organization of cardiovascular system. And in this video, today we are going to study the basic principles of circulatory function. That is the last learning objective of this chapter. Before starting the video, no need to write anything. The notes of this video are in the description of the lecture. So let's begin. So our question of interest, that's the last learning objective, is outline the basic principles of circulatory function. We have three basic principles that we will study today. Number first principle is blood flow to most tissues is controlled according to the tissue needs. So according to the tissue needs, blood flow to that tissue is controlled. Now we will explain this basic principle. There is more need of blood flow when tissues are active, as they need an increased supply of nutrients. It says, when the tissues are more active, they need an increased blood flow because they have an increased need of nutrients. Now this desired blood flow to the tissues is achieved by three mechanisms. Number first, we can increase the cardiac output. We can increase the cardiac output up to 4 to 7 times greater than the resting levels. So what is the cardiac output in resting levels? We can increase this cardiac output more than resting levels up to 4 to 7 times. So if there is a tissue and we have an increased need of blood to that tissue, we can increase the cardiac output. Similarly, microvessels of each tissue, they continuously monitor tissue needs clearly and act directly on local blood vessels. They will act directly on local blood vessels. These local blood vessels, they will dilate or they will constrict clearly to control local blood flow precisely to that level required for the tissue activity. So so this is the number point second, which implies microvessels of each tissue, they will monitor tissue needs and they will directly act on local blood vessels. These local blood vessels, they will dilate and constrict according to the tissue needs clearly. So this is the way number second. Moving on to the way number third, nervous control of circulation from CNS and hormones. They provide an additional help in controlling the tissue blood flow. Simple. Our principle was blood flow to most tissues is controlled according to the tissue need. So whatever is the tissue need, blood flow is controlled accordingly, and these are the mechanisms by which it is done. Now moving on to the circulatory function number two. That is, cardiac output is the sum of all the local tissue flows. So whatever is the sum of all the local tissue flows, that is equal to cardiac output. Now we will explain it. When blood flows through a tissue, it immediately returns by the way of veins to the heart. Whenever blood goes to the tissues, it is returned to the heart with the help of the veins. Clearly, the heart responds automatically to this increased inflow of blood by pumping it immediately back to the arteries. Now the blood is coming to the heart, there is an increased blood flow to the heart. Heart responds automatically by sending this blood back to the arteries. Thus, heart acts as an automaton. So heart is an automaton. It automatically responds to the increased inflow of blood by sending it back to the arteries. So this is the basic principle number two. So what is the basic principle number two? Cardiac output is the sum of all the local tissue flows. Now moving on to the principle number third, and the last principle. Arterial blood pressure regulation is generally independent of either local blood flow control or cardiac output control. This arterial blood pressure regulation, in our body we have the arterial blood pressure regulation. It is independent, it does not depend on local blood flow control or cardiac output control clearly. Now we will explain this principle. The circulatory system is provided with an extensive system of controlling the arterial blood pressure. So our circulatory system has mechanisms to control the arterial blood pressure, and this arterial blood pressure is independent, it does not depend on local blood flow control and cardiac output control. Let's understand it with the help of an example. For example, if the pressure falls significantly below normal, so arterial blood pressure falls below the normal, within seconds nervous reflex elicits changes like clearly. So within seconds nervous reflex starts to send some changes. What are those changes? They increase the force of heart pumping clearly, the contraction of the large venous reservoirs to provide more blood to the heart. So more blood comes to the heart by contraction of the large venous reservoirs. Constriction of arterioles in many tissues. There is constriction of arterioles in many tissues so that more blood accumulates in larger arteries to increase the arterial pressure. So So when the arterial blood pressure falls, with the help of these three mechanisms, clearly arterial blood pressure is maintained back to the normal, So arterial pressure falls, nervous reflex within seconds maintains arterial pressure with the help of these three mechanisms. Clearly, now over more prolonged periods, hours or days, kidneys play an additional role. Kidneys also play an additional role in pressure control by secreting pressure controlling hormones and by regulating the blood volume. ठीक? So over more prolonged periods, hours or days, kidneys plays an additional major role in pressure control by secreting pressure controlling hormones. Kidney secretes pressure controlling hormones and by regulating the volume of blood volume. So this was the principle number third. So this arterial pressure regulation, it is independent. It does not depend on local blood flow control or cardiac output control. It depends upon the nervous reflex and it depends upon the kidneys. Nervous reflex elicit changes within seconds. What are those changes? They increase force of heart pumping. They cause the contraction of the large veins reservoirs to provide more blood to the heart. They cause the constriction of the arterioles so that the blood is accumulated in the large arteries to increase the arterial pressure. So these are the three mechanisms with the help of the nervous reflex. And arterial pressure is also maintained with the help of kidneys. What does kidney do? They secrete pressure controlling hormones. They also regulate the volume of blood. Clearly, so this was the third basic principle, that arterial blood pressure regulation is generally independent. It does not depend on local blood flow control or cardiac output control. And when we explain it, we saw it depends upon the nervous reflex. It depends upon the kidneys. Thank you very much. This chapter, organization of the cardiovascular system, is clear. Now in the next video, we will start the properties of cardiac muscle from the Guyton. Thank you very much. Dr. Ugbe here. Keep revising, keep studying, share this video with your mates, comment on the video, like this video. Thank you very much. Love you all. Keep studying, keep revising.